It's just growing. It's just growing pains.
What's up, guys? Another episode.
Yeah, growing pains, right? So we're trying to figure out topics we want to do, and all the topics are going to relate to the idea of growing pains, like how painful experiences or painful lessons you learned growing up. And so, like, the first one we're going to talk about is a 50-30-20. And this was something I learned late in life. I was probably, well, I mean, late in life compared to other people. I was probably 24 or 25, just got out of college, just started my job before I learned this. So the idea is, look, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have someone teaching you how to handle your money, then you're going to fall into the same patterns that your parents have. And my parents were, or are, very impulsive spenders. Like, we'd be so poor and things would be so tight, it'd be like, no, we can't eat this, we can't eat that, we can't do this. And then near the end of the month, they would just sort of throw up their hands and be like, whatever, dude, let's just, and then all of a sudden we're eating Chuck E. Cheese and going to Red Lobster. And so it was always these sort of boom and bust. It'd be like feast and famine. And it was, for a kid, it was very unpredictable. So there'd go days we don't have food in the house, can't eat. And then all of a sudden I'm eating Red Lobster, right? So as a little kid, I remember thinking, what the hell? Like,
are we poor or are we not poor?
Are we not poor? Right? Like, which is it, dude? And through reading books on finances and learning how to budget, and there was all kinds of systems I tried, but the 50-30-20 was made very, very, very popular by Elizabeth Warren, super awesome senator and lady, and she talks about how that's a real good rule of thumb. That what you do is 50% of your income should go towards your bills, and anything that puts you over that, you have to figure out a way to cut. So there were years we only had one cell phone for the whole family because I couldn't afford a second line without going over that 50%. That's hard. When everybody else has got brand new iPhones, and I'm doing a flip phone or pushing a little brick Nokia, I'm like 1, 2, 3, A, 1, 2, 3, but it was a choice we had to make. I've never owned a new car. I've never gone on vacation like Europe, or I've never been on a cruise because I had to keep my bills below 50%, and then 30% goes to whatever you want. And the reason you need to set it aside is because you're going to end up spending that money anyway. So my parents, they're trying to tighten their belts, and then all of a sudden they splurge, and they'd spend 60% of all of our money in one night, right? 60% gone, boom. And then there's regret and shame and embarrassment and guilt, and you don't even feel good about the money you spend. When you don't have a plan, you don't feel good about the money you spend. So then that 30%, we could spend it, my wife and I, and feel good about it. Like we set, and by the way, this works if you have $1 million or if you have $10. You go $5 goes to bills, 30%, $3 goes to whatever we want. We're gonna go buy some Snickers bars, and then 20% goes to savings. So no matter what, we would try to put 20% aside. And this really has just helped me so much in my life. So that, yeah, we're not rich, but we're not poor. And my kids have never suffered with that up and down that I suffered with. They never suffered with tremendous poverty and I've taught them this lesson. My son right now has a job, same thing. 50% of his money goes to bills, gas, insurance, cell phone. 30% goes into his pocket. And by the way, his bills only take up maybe 25% of his paycheck. So that means that extra 25% moves into his want. So now he can spend 55% of his paycheck on whatever he wants, and 20% still goes into savings. And so now he can buy a $1,000 airsoft gun. And we went just recently, and he bought a $300, like $400 airsoft gun. And he's like, you know what, Dad, I really appreciate that you taught me how to save my money. He's like, because I know you never got to do this. And he's right. I mean, when we were driving, I'm like, dude, I never once had enough money to just spend it and not feel guilty about it. And I didn't need it. It wasn't, like, oh, dang, But my son gets to do that before, he's 17 years old. So I didn't learn that lesson until 24, 25. He's learning it at 16. Last year is when he started working. And now, a year later, he sees the benefit of it, right? And this is going to serve him when he has his own family, when he has his own house, his own cars. So, that's the 50-30-20 rule. And I wish someone had told me about it sooner.
Definitely. I like that. And my reason is twofold, is because, you're mentioning the whole idea of it doesn't really matter if you have $1 million or $10. And I agree with that because, yes, people start out poor, some people start out rich, but
Right.
poor, actually just consistently always poor is like a mind state.
Yeah.
Because, just like you're saying, where it's like that impulse buying. And I really like that idea because, the way you're doing it, it almost caters to people that are used to that poor idea because they still have that well of income that they can spend impulsively. It's just like giving yourself those deals.
Yes.
Where you're like, okay, I can still spend what I want, but
Yeah, you can spend 30%
I save this
on
much so
fun.
I still don't hate myself after.
Yeah, right. That's really it. Is what you're doing is taking the power back from money. See, money has a lot of power. When people say, well, that's only $5, you know who thinks that? Poor people. That's what poor
For
people.
sure.
That's what poor
I've
people.
said that numerous times.
Yeah, and rich people go, nah. I'm not spending a penny more than this thing is worth, right? And again, I think it's easier. They can afford to pay a tax guy to keep them within their 30% and blah blah blah. And we've seen MC Hammer get super hella rich, and then because he wasn't paying attention to how his money managers and what they were doing, they ended up handing him a huge bill 5 years later, and he's broke, right? So it doesn't relieve our responsibility. So MC Hammer took into his rich life his poor person mentality, and he's paid for it, right? And I think that's the idea. And it seems it's a little bit unfair, by the way. People who are raised in very rich families and learn how to manage money, just almost it's in the air. Like everything they do, when they buy a car, it's a tax write-off because it's linked to their company. When they buy an extra property, it's a tax write-off because they're going, this is for, and they just have ways of making their money work for them, where poor people work for their money. Poor people struggle to get $100, $1,000. Rich people go, I'm going to figure out a way that the government's going to pay me to fix my car, right? And that's genius.
They found the loophole, and it's funny because I watched a Netflix documentary, and it was all about football players.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a perfect aspect of it,
Yeah.
where it's these people that
Yeah.
work their butt off to become this 1% of people that are able to play professional
Yeah.
ball and get paid millions of dollars for it, and then they never think about, okay, well, what happens when I'm done playing this sport?
5 years later.
And then they're broke again.
Yeah.
All because, they didn't realize that you got to make your money work for you than to just...
Yeah. And so, I'll see on Facebook these memes. People say, oh, I wish high school had taught me valuable things like accounting, how to balance my checkbook, how to change a tire. And I go, number one, I couldn't even get you to bring paper and pencil to school. So it's the people who post that, I'm like, dude, I was your teacher, and I remember that kid being an idiot in class. They couldn't come prepared for one day, but they want me to teach them how to balance a checkbook. Bruh, first off, you're daydreaming. You're imagining you were a better student than you really were. Number two, that stuff's out there. You can learn that on YouTube. You can learn how to balance a checkbook, how to change a tire. You can go change the tire on the car outside right now. Ask your neighbor. Ask somebody to show you. So YouTube has videos or has tutorials, and you could learn today how to change your tire. You can learn today how to balance your checkbook. You can learn today how to do your taxes. But you want an excuse. Oh, they didn't teach me in high school, so.
And it's funny because, you were my English teacher, and there's a lot you taught about English. I got to say, my writing's still horrible. And, not your fault, It's really, there's certain things that just, you're not going to be able to teach somebody as a teacher. But one of the things that you...
Well, let me interrupt you real quick. It's not that your writing's horrible. You actually are a very good writer. You're right. Your grammar, your where to place your commas, those types of things. But your writing is really good. That's why you're a good songwriter. That's why your Def Jam poetry killed. I mean, you are a great writer. You're right. You're not a technical writer.
Technical writer, yeah, definitely. And it's funny because the one thing that you like taught me that I felt like is most important is you're like, dude, you can learn anything you want on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I like took that to heart, and there's so much I learned because of it. And it's funny because a lot of it helped with the aspect of like, you're right in the sense of I'm good with the creative aspect of writing, but then there's like that, you know, my chicken scratch actual writing, or just the idea of like you're saying, like I just didn't know the technical stuff, but YouTube helped like tremendously with that. Even the idea of like when you're writing a song that there's like a 4 count and like knowing like 1, 2, 3, so back to our last thing where we're talking about the 50, 30, 20.
Sure.
It actually kind of goes into our next talking point where I could have learned that lesson that you're talking about a lot sooner, but there was just this constant battle of it between my parents, right? My dad is an amazing saver.
Yeah.
And so much so that, you know, he was able to work a job for 20 years. And, you know, while him and my mom were together, which was until about 3rd grade, my mom had not had a job.
Right.
And she was like 40, all the way up to 40. She didn't have to have a job.
Yeah.
But what was crazy is, like, now my dad never worries. He has a bunch of money saved. And, you know, he would try to do that with my mom, but she's spending it with both hands, you know? And it was that mentality of, like, I got it, why not spend it, you know?
Right.
And it sucks because she's struggling that now on her own, you know?
Right.
And it's funny because I do have the aspect of, you know, I was explaining when we went on the hike of, we will calculate like income versus outcome.
Yeah.
But that's not enough like the 50, 30, 20 rule, because it's one thing to see like, okay, this is how much I'm getting, this is how much I'm spending, but to like break it up into those categories of like, okay, because I'll realize like, yeah, you know, between me and you, babe, we got like $600 every month, you know, but then at the end of the month, we're like, how come we don't have $600? And it's like a rock star we decided to get every day before work, or we ate fast food 3 times this week instead of just getting some groceries.
Right.
And when you put it in that 50, 30, 20, it's like way more apparent of like, okay, this is what I need to do. So, you know, you realize what you have, that 30% of carelessly that you spend, but when you spend that $1.50 or $3 for a rock star, you're like, you can calculate it better. Of like, well, $300 is my 30% to spend, so I just spent 100th of my whole 30% on one purchase.
Right. Plus, what it makes you do is it makes you decide, because I actually have met people that I've tried to help, and they say things like, no, you don't understand. I have to go to concerts. Like, if I don't go to concerts, life is not worth living. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not here to judge. That's fine. Let's put concerts in the 50% then. That's part of your 50% bills. Because you're saying no matter what, I must go to concerts. Cool. Just put it over here. And what's going to move then? What's rent? Medicine? Food? What's going to move? Right? Or if you're going to leave it in the 30% and it eats up the whole 30, then that means no renting movies off Netflix, no Netflix. Like, you better find somebody who has an account and just be that third bubble. But it makes you make choices. So fine, concerts, great, but then you got to make some choices. It's got to be, because it can't, that 20% savings, you got to pay yourself first. If you don't pay yourself that 20% off the top first for savings, that's how come when a car breaks down, it ruins the month. That's why when someone gets sick, you can't not go to work. You see, if I have that 20%, even if my job is paying me very little money, I get sick and I got to take that day off, I can now move that from savings over to my bills. And it's been accumulating, and it builds up fast. And you start to learn the value of percentages and the idea of a savings, because you start putting, it sounds stupid, but $20 a month, let's say it's 20. That's you know, in less than a year you have $240, right? That's $240. Who couldn't use $240? That's great. And you have it ready to go. So when something bad happens or something comes up, boom. And that's just for year 1. Year 2, that's $480.
Yeah, and it's cool because just a couple days ago I turned in my recycling, and I've been kind of like spacey with my work recently, so I haven't had as much money. And before I didn't care as much about recycling, you know, oh, it's $20, but me and my girl calculating, it's $30 a month
Yeah.
that we're making just off doing
Yes.
recycling, you know, and
That's $360 a year.
yeah, and
Yes.
that's a bunch of money that like is so useful. That's
Yes.
your gas for a week.
Yes.
That's if you don't get to go grocery shopping, well, you got 3 days of you can go to McDonald's or something. You
Yeah,
know?
that's exactly right. And so that same idea starts happening. You do the 50-30-20. That 20 has saved my life, literally saved my life. When I was in a motorcycle accident, and my insurance company would not pay for a medicine that was a blood thinner that was going to keep me alive. They just said, nah, bro, we're not paying for it. It was like $900 a shot, and I needed 3 a day.
Jesus.
Having savings saved my life. Now, I ended up having to fight my insurance company, and I got it, but I needed it that day. And the insurance company was like, dude.
You're like, you mean all the time I was paying for it?
Yeah.
The one time I actually
The
needed
needed,
it,
like to
whoa,
save my
whoa.
life. They went like, hold on. How do we know you're not partying it up with your blood thinner?
I know, like, are you abusing your blood thinner?
Yeah. So, you know, that savings is something that poor people think is not very valuable. And rich people, or well-to-do people, realize it's a lifesaver. And that's another big mental difference between poor people and rich people, or people who are going to be well off. And you can start anywhere. You can start anywhere and make it there.
And my dad, you know, ever since third grade, he's always been like super good at keeping his money. And I would say the entire time I was in school, I didn't understand the idea of like, he always had way more money in his savings than he did, you know, when he was working. You know, his check, most of it would go to the important stuff. And when I'd say, you know, hey, you could spend it on this, or he, in the same boat as you, he never really went on vacation. He's been on a cruise once in his life, and I'll be like, why don't you just go on that? He's like, because you never know. And then it's like, time and time again, I've just been shown one thing after another where it's like, man, if he didn't just keep that and like just knew that he shouldn't just spend it on something just for fun, that like it saved him completely.
Yeah. And he's able to give you gifts, you know, to help you or a brother out or a family member out. And there's the ones you know of and probably ones you don't know of where he's been able to just be like, hey, let me help you with that. Boom. Right? Because he's got that savings. And I wish I had learned that sooner. And I think that's part of this podcast, that growing pains thing. That's something I had to figure out. And 24 doesn't sound, I don't know, depending on who you are watching this, that doesn't sound like a long time. But dude, if I had learned this at 16, I could have been set, right? But I was struggling, and we were dirt poor. I mean, like crazy poor, paycheck to paycheck, borrowing from June. I'm in September, borrowing from June. And it was unsatisfying. It was frustrating. It was a drain on my marriage. It was a drain on my friendships. It was a drain, and I had to learn. I really, what I had to do was get humble. I had to realize, I can't do this, dude. What I'm doing is not working. That's it. Poor people keep going, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. We'll figure it out. It'll be okay. It won't.
One of the like worst things that it was a thing I had to totally just exactly like you're saying, of like be humble and realize it, is like, you know, I would spend all my money as a kid to just show the next person I have that thing, you know, and it's like the worst reason to do stuff. And you know, I think that again is like a poor people thing where, I mean, and I guess with rich people they do that too, but they have the choice to do that. But either way, it's like senseless spending of like, you're literally throwing your safety blanket away just because you want to like be like, well, I got the new Xbox too.
Yeah,
like,
check out what I got. Yeah.
And I just feel like it's funny that you're saying, you know, oh, I wish I would have known this sooner. It's like, I'm 20 and I'm still like, I wish I had known this sooner, you know? Because I'll play that game of, you know, you should never play, but I'm just like, oh, all those times I essentially spend that, like, I wouldn't have to worry about student loans right now.
Right.
Or like, my car insurance wouldn't be such a big deal every month if I had cared about that money, where all those things I got, I couldn't even tell you where they are right now.
And that's another thing is money just, I mean, if you don't have a plan for your money, it'll go. It'll disappear in a heartbeat. And you're like playing CSI, like, where, what, who, did somebody rob me? Because if you don't have a plan will be made for your money. Like someone else, whether it's your, you know, the grocery store, your online gambling, whatever, I mean, they're going to get your money.
You were saying, as far as like how money will go, and how I was saying how, you know, younger you don't get it. It's actually super important that you understand that at 16, because like there's small shit like, you know, I always had Xbox Live when I was younger, you know, and that was like $10 a month or something. and that doesn't mean nothing to you at the time. But you know, eventually you're gonna have to grow up. You know, eventually you're gonna become an adult, and then when you know society tells you, okay, I graduate, well, I have to go to school now. Well,
Right.
that's a perfect example of every school is just trying to take that money for
Yeah.
the next 10 years of your life.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't learn that hard lesson early on, you're gonna get in a situation where, okay, I'm paying $300 a month
Right.
for some school for a thing that I'm not even sure what I want to do yet.
Right.
You know, because
Right.
so it's like.
And to, like, again, if you did the 50-30-20, you could say to yourself, okay, that's worth it. I want to pay $300 a month for the next 10 years because this is worth it. But even if it doesn't pan out, it's within the budget. So maybe it was a bad choice, and really, again, no education's really a bad choice and all that good stuff. And I believe that philosophically, but it's another thing to when it's taking up 90% of your paycheck, 50%
For
of your
sure.
check, just that one loan is 50% of your paycheck. Now add on electricity, water, and so then all of a sudden you're like, dang, I gotta, you gotta make tough choices. And I think everyone, by the way, everyone can figure out a way to survive, whether that's living with a family member or, you combining resources, finances with somebody else, with, your partner. So it's never too late to start. But you got to face the hard facts. This is taking up 50% of for the next 10 years. So now every purchase I make is first weighed against that. 50% of my paycheck is going to that loan. So I'm not picking up a new car loan. I'm not picking up a house payment. I'm not picking up whatever, unless I figure out a way to. And student debt, you can't get rid of. You can't move it. You can't. They're gonna get you. They got you. Student debt loan is the sort of scam of the century. It's the loan. Everyone tells you, oh yeah, you can get a loan for your house, get a loan for your education. It's okay. And in a way they're right, but there is a limit. You got to remember, I got to live my life. I got to live. And I think a lot of people are figuring that out now. I think right now people are starting to figure out college loans are not worth it. Like I'd rather, and when I went through college, I worked 2 jobs, tried to keep my loans down. And, I didn't know at the time, but my wife had just a tremendous amount of debt. And then when I got my master's, it was a lot of debt. And this is all at that 24 age when I didn't realize what I was doing, and I hurt myself. And so it took a long time to dig my way out of that using the 50-30-20. And if I had known it sooner, I could have saved myself some heartache and time.
For sure, and that's the thing with a lot of these kids that are like, well, I have to go to school because who am I if I'm not
Yeah.
going to college
Yeah.
and becoming that? So then they end up signing 10 years of their earnings
Yeah.
for the next 10 years
Yes.
just to give them. It's the same thing with the Xbox as far as I'm concerned.
Correct.
You're just doing it for other people
Yeah.
instead of noticing okay, well, does it fit my 50-30-20 rule?
Yeah.
And if this is 25% of my 50% that I have to put towards bills, is it worth it?
Right.
Right. And it's I agree it's with the houses too, because it's kind of the same idea. People
Right.
think, oh, I gotta have a house because
Right.
that's what a 30-year-old has, but and there's people that have that problem. But at least with a house, you're like, okay, I'm getting stuff out of it.
It's true, it does increase in value.
The problem with the education
Yeah.
is these kids are doing this and then not even knowing what career they want to do it for.
Right.
They're get it in philosophy where
Right.
it's cool, but what are you going
Right.
to make money off of?
And again, I had a student just recently. They ended up going to a very prestigious school. I mean, one of the top schools in the nation. But something happened with the financial aid, and they ended up taking $80,000 worth of debt first year
Jesus.
to stay, to live, eat, stay. And again, I don't necessarily judge that. If you can afford that bill at the end, that's 80 for the first year. Now, eventually she got her financial aid, but that 80 is not going away until she's 40-something years old.
Yeah, for sure.
She just signed away 24 years of her life.
Yeah, and you start calculating that into how many hourly,
Yeah.
how many hours you're working
Yeah.
just to do that. It's
Something
no.
else with that 50-30-20 that's helped me a lot, and I've done it in the conversation a couple times. What I do when somebody goes, $10 a month is not that much, and Xbox Lives now is like $14.95 a month, whatever, round up, say 15. Well, then I go multiply that times 10, that's 150, and then add 10% more, so another or add it 2 more times, sorry. So it goes $15 a month times 10, that's 150 plus 30 for the 2 extra months, 15 and 15. So that's 30, 150, that's $180 a month to play games. Now, if you can afford that and you're 30% want, more power to you. But it's because it's spread out, we think, this is what poor people say, it's only $15 a month. It's not that bad. It's only 15. It's like, okay, no, that's 180 a year. How long you own your Xbox? 5 years. Multiply that times 5. What could you have done with 700 and whatever dollars?
Yeah, and it's funny because I think even, some people will do this 50, 30, 20 rule, but they'll write certain things off just
Right.
like that, where they're like, well, that's not really
Right.
bills. It's like, yeah, dude, that's bills. That will eventually add up.
Yeah, and you sign up for a year at a time. Or cell phones. Everyone thinks like, oh, it's only $30 a month, or it's only $50 a month. I've heard people paying $200 a month.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, times 10, that's $2,400 a year. How long you had that cell phone? 2 years. $4,800.
Yeah, that's
What could you have done with that?
so much.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
you start doing that, when you start talking about money, you got to think to yourself, okay, let's multiply that out. Let's multiply it times 10 and then add it 2 more times. So $100 a month times 10, that's 1,000 plus 100 and 100, 2, so that's 1,200. How long have I had that? What could I have done with that money? Because again, if I get a brand new car and I'm paying $500, 300 and something for the note, 200 and something for the insurance, $500 average. Now you say to yourself, okay, that's 5,000 plus another 1,000, so that's 6,000 times 5. That's a $30,000 car. But on the sticker, it was only 23, 22.
See, and that will happen with all types of things, including student loans, where
Yeah.
you don't.
This ain't a
they'll
charity.
say-
They're not running a charity.
Yeah, and it's the same idea of like, oh, it's just $15 a month. But what they do is with their interest,
Yeah.
it's only 3% interest a year.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, how much am I spending in a year? Okay, so how much does that 3% really turn into?
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, okay, I was paying that $15,000 for my student loan, but I just spent enough to buy a 150 mile Honda car,
Yeah.
that could get me around
Yeah.
just in interest
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a whole nother thing that I think is like people do with their, poor mindset, and that they really need to be conscious of when they're doing this 50, 30, 20 rule is, there's these certain bills where you can pay a minimum.
Right.
And then you end up paying so much
Yes.
more, and so you got to weigh that in your 50, 30,
Yeah.
20 rule
Right.
of like, okay, if
Right.
I'm paying the 20 when I should be paying 100,
Right.
how much longer am I paying, and how much
Right.
am I just giving them?
Yeah, credit card
for
companies are
nothing?
not. In fact, I have no credit cards. 0 credit cards.
Genius.
I own them in terms of like I put $10,000 on a Visa, whatever, but I don't. I have no credit cards. We own all our cars. I have no car payments. We just bought an RV, so I have a $123 payment on that a month. But I've already started attacking it where I'm going, okay, I'm going to take that 30%, whatever I want. So the bill's 123, that's in the 50%. Then I take from that 30%, like another $100, and I move it over here and I go, I'm going to tack this thing $100 at a time every
Let's
month.
pay it twice as fast.
Pay it twice as fast.
Yeah, definitely. That's the best way to do it. And I don't think that people really like get that idea of like, or at least I shouldn't even say people. I should just say myself. Where, especially when you do stuff like that, where and we've kind of already hit it, where you're paying it. You already signed your life away,
Yeah.
and then you don't realize what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then once you're kind of stuck in that and you're in that survive mode of like, well, I'm just paying what I can afford right now to do it, but then you end up shooting yourself in the foot
Right.
2 years from now.
Yeah. And you might be in a situation, everyone could be in a situation where you're going, okay, I'm at 70, 80% bills. Okay, at least you can realize it. So now, Chinese food on Fridays, you go, I can't, man. I can't. I got to get this down to 50%.
I think that 50, 30, 20 rule is like super important, and I think it's going to help a lot of people if they pay attention to it.
I agree. And by the way, that's another thing. It's like if I went to my doctor, right? If I go to my doctor, it's because there's something wrong. I mean, you can do a checkup. You're like, I feel healthy. Let me make sure everything's still healthy. And imagine your doctor said to you, hey, man, there's something wrong. You got this going on, and you got to do this to save yourself. No person on this planet goes, man, you don't know what you're talking about. Get out of here. You're crazy. And leave. And nobody does that. People go like, oh, dang. Oh, dang. I better do this. I better do that. I better do this. But with this kind of thing, like 50, 30, 20, it's as important as staying healthy. Staying financially healthy is just as important as staying physically healthy. And yet people will go, whatever, bro.
Yeah, and it's funny that I think when we were talking about the whole student loans thing and people doing their education, it's almost the same way of like, you know, that doctor telling you like, oh yeah, you have this serious thing you need to handle. It's like, you know, you as a kid, you don't have these worries, you don't think about it. Then you hit 18 and everyone's like, you are an adult now. You have to have everything figured out. They're like, oh dang, you know,
It
like,
definitely is like, whoop.
yeah, and then they make impulsive decisions that, you know, will affect them for the next 10 years. But, you know, how I was saying earlier about the how my parents would both have that disagreement about, you know, my mom would spend on things impulsively that she thinks is important, but long term it really wasn't, versus my dad was all about like trying to, you know, penny pinch.
Yeah.
And I started noticing that in like a bunch of different areas, you know, even with like my older brothers, where, you know, my oldest brother, he had good grades, but he still liked to do, you know, the wrong things. They had this thing called the Mad Pad, where it's just like, where bad things happen.
Yeah.
You know, and because he was so good, my mom, and, you know, we all have the joke of calling him the golden child.
Yeah,
But it's because it's my mom's child and
Right.
not my dad's, so.
Yeah, right.
And so the golden child got to go to the Mad Pad, but my dad's whole theory was, and it's funny, his whole theory is, okay, yeah, you can let him go to the Mad Pad, but that just means Jacob is going to go 2 years before the golden child got to go, you know? And what ends up happening with that whole idea is like, when the parents do this stuff, and my parents, you know, not only were they impulsive with, you know, the money whole thing, but it's impulsive of like, they're really reactive. So
Yeah.
when one person's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, go to the Mad Pad, you know, my dad right then and there would jump in. And so it creates this thing of like, maybe unconsciously, maybe sometimes consciously, where the kids will play this role of playing the parent for what suits their needs.
Oh yeah, and I think, you know, it's weird. On one hand, I don't believe children, at least when they're very, very young, are doing it necessarily on purpose, but they start to see a pattern. If mom says no, I have another chance with dad. Or when it comes to this subject, dad's more likely to say yes. Once I get his, he'll override mom's. And so, I mean, I did it. I used to do it. I used to be like, if I wash dishes, that'll put my mom in a good mood. Then I'm going to ask her if I can go over to Manny's house. And then my dad's going to say no, and my mom's going to, and then I'll go, but mom said, and then my mom will yell at him, and then I get to go. And it was like clockwork, bro. Like clockwork. So, yeah, I think something I had to learn, and I learned it pretty early. Again, you know, my oldest son, I was 22 years old when my wife was pregnant with him, and I think that's what scared me into all these life lessons, because like you, Sam's expecting his firstborn pretty soon here. Like you, I sort of went, dude, I want my kid to have better than my life. I want that kid to have more opportunities than me, to be safer than I was, to have a more stable upbringing. I want and again, it was very dysfunctional in my family, and I said, I don't want that for my son. So I started taking parenting classes, I started taking financial classes, couples classes, I mean, all relationship classes, all kind of reading books, and I learned something that I picked up in one of the classes, is that parents have to have a united front. So that even if my wife is making a call I disagree with, I'm not saying that in front of the kids. We might have to go to the room and talk later. I'll be like, but in that moment, I don't care if she says, you know, let's say she's like, yeah, the sky's purple. I'm like, you heard your mother. Sky's purple. Go to sleep. Like, I'd send him to go take a nap, or like, go stand in the corner. You're in timeout for saying the sky's blue and your mother said it's purple. And you just back their play. And then we can talk later and be like, okay, how are we going to fix this? Because clearly the sky's not purple, right? Or by the way, more often than not, it saved my ass from looking stupid, because my wife she was a stay-at-home mom, so she was there. She knew what Matthew. If someone drew on the wall and she's like, he's our only kid, it's got to be Matthew, right? But I'm like, wow, let's not rush to conclusion, right? She's like, I saw him do it. I saw it, so that it kept me in check. She was right way more than I would have wanted to admit. And in my house, my dad would just get really loud and angry, and it didn't matter what the subject was. He was right because he was the loudest and most aggressive. And I didn't want that in my house. And so I had to, and now again, I still mess up. I still make mistakes. I still raise my voice at times or contradict my wife in front of the kids. But then I would afterwards have to go sit everybody down, be like, hey, look, first, I'm sorry. I turn to my wife. I say, look, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I should have backed your play. And then to my son, I'm like, look, I did the wrong thing not backing up your mom. We're a team. You're wrong, right? And it has saved us so much heartache. I mean, really, we've had a couple of big fights in our life. But when I talk to my friends and they're like, I called her the C word and then I left and I slept in the car. I'm like, bro, I've never had that. I've never done that. Are you out of your mind? That's crazy. That's crazy.
You didn't wake up dead.
Yeah, or like a buddy of mine's like, I spit in her face. I'm like, that's domestic violence, dude.
For real.
That's domestic violence. You assaulted your wife, and they're like, oh no, we were just arguing about the dishwasher. I'm like,
not worth it. Like,
yeah. So it saved me, man. Having a united front makes me humble, because I gotta check my pride. Because everybody wants to be right. Like, I'm the man of the house and I'm right. And everybody wants to be right. And I had to decide, do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? And by the way, most of the time, if I had taken that hard stance, I was going to be wrong. In the long run, I found out, like,
you're gonna be not happy.
oh my, yeah, I'm so glad I didn't die on that hill. I'm so glad.
And I think a whole another important part of that, and it kind of goes into, our last podcast of like, how you were saying, where do you want to be right or happy? But, a lot of these people are going to see, our advice and the lessons we're trying to at least, talk out ourselves and they'll apply them. Even me, I rewatched the last podcast a bunch of times and I started applying them. And it's harder than it seems, It's like you don't just adopt ideas, If you're the type of person where you get angry and your initial reaction is to yell, every time you get angry, you're not going to think like, well, maybe I shouldn't yell.
Right.
But the only thing that gives that, and it's almost like with the 12-step program of like, one of the steps is giving amends. And it's like, you have to like recognize your wrong behaviors to be able to fix them.
Correct. Because if you don't think you're wrong, then you won't mean it. And you won't change. Again, it's like when my doctor tells me, look, you got to stop eating so much salt. And I'm like, I'm not eating that much salt. He's like, okay, what'd you have today? I'm like, 3 Pepsis, a Whopper, and some fries. He's like, yeah, that's like 3,000 milligrams of salt. I'm like, oh. Right? But in that moment, I didn't think I was...
You're like, that's not even my worst day.
Yeah, that's just up to right now at 11 o'clock.
Just think about what'll happen after this.
Yeah, exactly. I have like Burger King coupon sticking in my pocket. I'm like, it's inexplicable. I don't know why I'm having so much sodium.
And it's funny because even once you admit it's wrong, it's still like a whole nother thing of like making it a reality, like I actually, because I have this huge problem with rock stars, and we talked about it on the hike, and you're just saying like how you'd have a thing with soda, and for a while nobody could drink soda, and then eventually you could have soda in the house, but you still had to do this mental thing of like, I'm putting dog food in front of my soda.
Yeah.
So I gotta think like, well, I wouldn't eat this dog food. Why am I gonna do this thing that also isn't good for me?
Yeah. In fact, the dog food probably healthier than that soda.
Yeah, for real. It has more nutrition in there.
Yeah.
And then, because today I went grocery shopping, and so with me and my girl, because I noticed a thing of I'm a competitive person. I like winning.
Yeah.
It makes me feel better or whatever.
Yeah.
So my girl's gotten smart on that idea, and she'll give me like, challenges. She'll be like, all right, for the next 2 weeks, we're only drinking water.
We gotta figure that out.
Yeah, we do.
We just need another person to walk around.
I know.
So she figured that idea out, and so what she did is like, okay, we're having this challenge of for 2 weeks we can only drink water, and like for the win, at at the end of the 2 weeks, whoever loses, the other person will buy Mongolian. We both like Mongolian, so it's this two-part thing of like, and it sucks that it's taken to this point because like I would really just be like, yeah, I know I'm gonna have a heart attack, but like the doctor's gonna tell me that in 20 years, I'm not gonna worry about that.
Yeah.
But
That problem is so far away. Yeah.
Versus just being like, well, I'll get you Mongolian if you just drink water. I'm like, deal, because then you get the whole like you get to talk about it. You're just like, how many waters did you drink today? So it just like it distracts you. But I went grocery shopping and it was way harder than I thought. Like I looked at the Rockstar so many times.
Yeah.
I'm calculating in my head like, well, Mongolian is like $30.
So
a Rockstar's only $1.18 at Winco. So, I'm saving money.
Right, by drinking Rockstars. Right, exactly. That's what we do. Like the power of rational. Okay, two things. One, you don't understand how addicted you are to something until you try to stop. Like you have no idea whether it's smoking or whatever until you try to stop. A real effort to go cold turkey or to stop. Then you find out how big a hold. Like you're not sure how much you rely on coffee. Try going a week without it. See what's up. Day 3, you'll be like, or day 1. I mean, I know people that they cannot function as human beings without coffee.
I know. And it's like this aspect of like, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm so like well put together, but they don't realize how dependent on it because for a day they don't have Starbucks and then they're yelling at everybody, just like
road rage. And then the first thing is you never know how powerful something controls your life until you try to stop. And the second thing is you will rationalize anything. This is how dudes end up beating their wives and they go, oh, but you made me angry and it's my boss at work and I just had a I mean, they rationalize domestic violence, drug abuse, sexual assault, and in their heart and in their brain, they know what's wrong and that's why they're rationalizing. So when the more you find yourself rationalizing, the more likely that's an indicator that what you're doing is not good and that you should stop. The more you have to, like when you start going, because we're all idiots when it comes to math until you're going, wait, $1.50 Rockstar in a day, that's right, and all of a sudden your beautiful mind, you're like, because you're rationalizing, because you really want a Rockstar, and that's how powerful a hold it has on you. Now again, I'm not even saying, because everybody's got their thing, everybody's got something that they're,
some people got 3 things.
3 things, 10 things, right? And so it's like the 50-30-20. You got to decide: is this worth it? Is it something I want, or is it something I need? And then, how is this playing out? Especially when you think about your health, because you're right, it's $1.50 for that Rockstar, but what it really is, dude, is once you start having to take diabetes medicine, it's free insulin. It's $7,000.
The craziest part is like I've heard more extreme cases that really apply to the people around me, and I still went and got a Rockstar after. That's how I know there's like a serious problem. Like my brother was drinking them like candy, like I was, and his heart was beating out of rhythm, and they had to like shock him back into rhythm.
Or my cousin, I love he was my older cousin. He was like my big brother, and he develops the type 2 diabetes. I can't remember which one you develop, whether it's type 1 or type 2.
It's type 2.
Okay, so he developed type 2 from an unhealthy habit. And then he kept drinking soda. And when they would catch him in the garage drinking sodas, and it killed him, dude. He died. He had a massive stroke before, paralyzed half his face, he could barely walk around. He had a kid, and he'd be like, I'm going to stop for my kid. I love my kid, I'm going to stop. I love my wife. His wife, she shaped his whole life to try to keep him away from sodas, and he would just sneak him, and it killed him, dude. If he went to his death, I love him. He's my cousin. I love him to death. But he walked right into death. He might as well put a gun to his head. And because it was so slow and the effects were so long term, he was in denial.
For sure. And I think there's like something deep to that, because I question that myself of like, I say I want to be healthy. I have this future child coming, and I say I want to be healthy for him. And not only with that, but the healthy, aspects of like behavior, and having a healthy relationship with my girlfriend and stuff like that. And like, you say that stuff's important until it's like right in your face, and then you're doing just like you're saying, where you're like rationalizing why you're not.
And I think you gotta, for me, what's worked, and again, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, but for me, what's worked is saying, I can't do it necessarily for my kids. So like when I was doing the parenting classes, I would say, what originally motivated me was I want him to have a better life. But really what it came down to is I want to have a better relationship with my son. So that in a way, we have to be a little bit selfish in order to give. So you want to be healthy so you can live a really long life and see your daughter grow and experience all of life and have opportunity. And that's why you need to get your finances in order so she can have more opportunities than you had. And that's why, all of these things. And I think those are good to get us off the couch. But to keep us off the couch, it's got to be for me. I feel better when I'm healthier. I like having money, like being able to buy my truck, being able to buy an RV, being able to pay my mortgage, and not be freaked out. My childhood was filled with fear because we didn't have the basics. And so I don't want to live in fear. So that fear motivates me to do the right thing so I don't have to live in fear. And so you got to be a little bit selfish. You got to say, I want to do this for me. There are also considerations, and they may be the thing that kicks us in the butt to get us off the couch. But to stay off the couch, you got to do it for you.
Definitely. And there's aspects of that where I think people, like you're saying with like rationalizing it, where you, with the soda, with your cousin, or with me, with the Rockstar, we tell ourselves that this is our little bit of enjoyment, But in reality, if we just stop doing that thing and start taking care of ourselves, it's the untapped potential of like pure euphoria you could get from just being healthy and doing the right things with your life instead of like slowly creeping towards the grave of just drinking that next Rockstar.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how like little things like that are just so like, what's the word, existential when you really think about it.
Yeah, I don't think anything's in isolation. I think everything is connected. And so physical health, financial health, emotional health, spiritual health, I think they're all connected. I think that, they affect each other. They influence each other.
Definitely. And I've noticed that with myself where, I gave myself all this credit of like, oh, I got so much smarter and I'm so much more conscious. And then the minute I stopped taking care of my body, all of those bad behaviors I had came right back. And it's because it's like there really is that like mixture there of like, if your body's not 100%, your mind can't be either.
Right. Yeah.
From here, I think we should start with the advice portion. We have like an anonymous advice question, and basically the topic is they just want us to talk about, that, and we kind of already hit it in other ones of, bad relationships, abusive relationships, but it's the idea of like, it's not always somebody spitting in your face or putting their hands on you that, there's this emotional and psychological aspect of it that like, because there's not a bruise, people don't always see it.
Yeah.
But it's just as important, especially for like the mental health of people.
And too, I find it's being a high school teacher, I watch the rise and fall of empires every day. I watch these two kids start to talk, and then next thing you know, they're all over each other, and I gotta be like, whoa, wait, and then they're dating, they love each other, and then it's over in 3 days. I'm like, wait, I thought, no, I hate them. Oh, my bad, I didn't know, my bad. So I watch the rise and fall, and something I've noticed is that a majority of the time, the abuse is mental or emotional. And again, this goes back to if you don't figure out a way to deal with your demons or the way you were raised, if you don't figure out a way to get to the optimal relationship you want, that what you're going to find is you fall back into patterns that you've been handed by your parents, by society, by your friends. And so you need to know, what are you moving towards? What do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like? Rather than, again, like financially, vaguely, like, well, everyone wants to be rich. Everybody wants to be rich. Just like in a relationship, everybody wants to be happy. Okay, but what steps are you taking?
What is happiness separately for you guys? What is happiness together?
What is it?
And what are the steps you will actually take to do that?
And being able to just say, look, I don't know why, but that sucks and I don't like it. And we need to fix it. We need to change it. Not explain it away. Not dismiss it. not convince you that it wasn't ever a thing, right? I mean, we both have known dudes who have cheated on somebody and then try to tell that person, don't believe your eyes and ears. You didn't see me sleeping with her in our bed. Like, yeah, you did. That's
Or even worse, they like will convince that person that somehow they had to play.
right.
And
Yeah,
somehow
like it's
their
your fault. It's your fault. I had to go sleep with her, and so, you know, I think you have to know what you're moving towards. You have to have a very concrete goal, and don't be afraid to go, look, this is what I need. I need this. I want this. This is something that is non-negotiable. And that person either will or won't. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Let's imagine, and we've seen in modern times where people go, we have an open relationship, and if both people are okay with that, awesome. But if one of those people is not okay with it, then they're being manipulated. They're being taken advantage of. And even again, let's imagine they go, we have an open relationship, but really it's one person wanted that, and it's forcing the other person
The other
to accept
person
it.
just doesn't want to lose that person.
Right.
So
So they
just
go, and so really it's open relationship only on one side, and they're just hoping that person will wake up or realize or come around to loving them only, and so that's the kind of thing you got to be like, I need to be the only one. I need this to be monogamous. I need this, and I think there's freedom for both ends, because again, whatever is your relationship, if you stated clearly, this is what let's imagine from the person who wants the open relationship. If they clearly go, look, this is what I need, and then this person goes, I can't do that, then they should be able to walk away rather than try to convince them to be okay with it. Because now you're not going to get happiness for either side.
Definitely.
It's going to fall apart. It's going to break apart. And so I think emotional, mental abuse is more rampant. And physical abuse, everyone clearly, even the abuser knows it's wrong, which is why they rationalize and excuse it away. But the emotional and mental abuse is more prevalent, and we've got to tackle that problem. And again, I wish when I was younger, I had realized how to state what I need sooner.
I feel it. And what I've noticed, and there will be situations where it's kind of like you're saying where, okay, well, they both have to have the healthy communication of, okay, I can say I don't like this thing, and that we can work towards something like that. And I've seen relationships, with friends and family where they're, especially in the beginning, when you have that lovey-dovey stage of like, there is real potential in the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think one problem, especially with, the emotional and psychological part of it is like, people have their internal lines.
Mm-hmm.
What they're
Mm-hmm.
when somebody punches you in the face,
Yeah.
it's way easier to draw that line.
Yeah.
But when somebody's like manipulating you
Yeah.
emotionally or
Yeah.
physically, or like they're saying, oh, I want this open relationship, it's a lot harder to figure out those lines. And I've known a couple people that are like polyamorous.
Yeah.
And the surprising part is their communication, and it has to be to work. It has to be way better.
more, yes.
And they actually create way more defined lines
Correct.
than there would be,
Right.
monogamy.
Correct. I agree. That's why I'm saying any type of relationship can work, and I agree. If they're both polyamorous, that they will have very, very clear, like 7 p.m. This is when our relationship is on hold, or I'm going to go be with that person, and I'm going to 100% be with them. And as long as I can really accept that, dude, it works. Like, that's where I think some people get off, they are wrong when they go, well, that can never work. Dude, if the lines are clear, if the understanding is 100%, boom, here it all is, and you might have to, fit little tweaks here and there, but any relationship could work. So clearly a monogamous relationship can work and this is where, when I was younger, I thought, well, love will be enough, and, well, they should just know. They should know that bothers me. And I would even twist it to, because they don't know that bothers me, that means they don't love me, right? I would, to my wife, who I love, I would do that in my brain, and I had a figure out how to kill that, dude. I had to figure out how to put that to death because it would have destroyed us. And love is not enough. You have to plan. You have to go, here's what's bothering me. When I come home from work and the dishes are dirty, it feels like I worked all day because she was stay-at-home mom for a really long time. Like, I've been working all day and you've been here at the house just messing around or sleeping or doing. And then, by the way, she then broke down her whole day for me, and I'm just like, I'm going to go wash the dishes now. You just stay right there. I'm going to go wash the dishes now. Because that's what it was. It was a fundamental misunderstanding. I had this picture in my head of her laying around all day long, messing around, and I'm working my ass off, and I come home and I saw the dishes as disrespect. Instead of seeing what the reality of it. She has done all this, and the least I can do is do the dishes. Like, I still owe, right? And so that idea of me clearly stating, and be careful, because by the way, you might find out you ain't got a leg to stand on. You might find out I'm full of shit here. I should not have said anything. I should have just done the dishes and been quiet. Instead, now she's like, let me explain to you what I need. And I'm like, I'm on the wrong end of this one. Damn it. Right? So, and it makes it fair. It makes it, because now my wife can go, here's what I need, and here's, and it's clear, and we're not guessing. And by the way, it was never about the dishes. Again, I felt disrespected. And then I realized, actually, I'm the one being disrespected. That's a hard pill to swallow. That's some bitter ass medicine when you come home going like.
Well, and I think it's really hard, for a lot of people to realize that, and that seed you were talking about of like you assuming what the other person should already know. I think that's like another thing of like you have to have that healthy communication, and with like maybe it might not even just be lines you create with that other person, but internal lines you create with yourself of like, okay, well, if I'm at a point in a relationship where I feel worked up all day, every day, well, I need to confront this thing, and I need to, my line is every time I'm worked up and I'm blaming somebody unconsciously, well, I have to make that communication.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I hope we gave enough information about our anonymous topic of the day. You guys leave any for the next video if you guys like. Later. Have a good one.
It's just growing. It's just growing.